It started in the shadows, far from the headlines, far from the names that turned into Hollywood legends. These men operated in the quiet corners of the underworld where deals were whispered, power shifted without a sound, and the most dangerous figures were the ones nobody talked about. Tonight, we're going to open a few forgotten files. 5 mobsters you never heard of, but probably should have. They weren't the faces on the front page. They were the architects working behind the curtain, brokers of influence, innovators of crime, and ghosts who shaped the American underworld in ways most people never realized. This is their story. If you enjoy our videos, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and share your thoughts about today's topic in the comments. It really helps the channel grow. Let's begin. It started quietly on the narrow streets of South Philadelphia, a neighborhood of row houses, corner groceries, and men who kept their business behind closed doors. That's where a boy named Angelo Annaloro grew up, the son of a Sicilian foundry worker who came to America looking for something better. Angelo was born in Villalba, Sicily, in 1910. When his family settled in Philadelphia, they opened a small grocery store on North 6th Street. He helped behind the counter, slicing cheese and weighing produce, before deciding he wanted more than a family business could offer. By 12, he'd left school. By his teens, he had his own store and a reputation for being sharper, calmer, and more patient than the other young men trying to make their way in South Philly. He changed his last name to Bruno, his grandmother's maiden name, and started moving in circles that dealt in more than groceries. He was brought into the Philadelphia mob by Michael Maggio, a powerful figure in the city's Italian community who built his own fortune in the cheese business. Bruno married his childhood sweetheart, Assunta Sue Maranca, in 1931. They had 2 children, Michael and John, and built the kind of home life that hid the truth of who he was becoming. He owned a pest control company in New Jersey, an aluminum business in Florida, even a piece of a hotel in Havana. But behind the paperwork, he was already a man of the underworld, connected to gambling, bootlegging, and the quiet network of Sicilian power stretching from Philadelphia to New York. By the late 1950s, the Philadelphia mob was restless. Boss Antonio "Mr. Miggs" Polina ran the family through intimidation and fear. When word spread that Polina had marked Bruno for death, the commission, the mafia's ruling council, stepped in. They removed Polina and handed control of the family to Bruno. That decision, made in 1959, changed the direction of the Philadelphia mafia for the next 2 decades. Angelo Bruno was different. Where other bosses ruled through violence, Bruno ruled through patience. Where others shouted, he listened. He was called the docile Don, a man who preferred negotiation over murder. He avoided the spotlight, avoided headlines, and stayed out of prison for nearly his entire career. His longest sentence was 2 years, not for violence, but for refusing to testify before a grand jury. Bruno kept his operations traditional: bookmaking, loan sharking, labor rackets. He banned his men from dealing narcotics, knowing that drugs brought both money and heat. But he wasn't blind to profit. He allowed outside dealers to sell heroin in Philadelphia as long as they paid tribute. That decision made him rich and made enemies of his own men who saw others cashing in while they were told to stay clean. When one of his soldiers, Nicodemo "Little Nicky" Scarfo, killed a man in a barroom fight, Bruno didn't have him whacked. He exiled him, sent him down to the then sleepy boardwalk of Atlantic City, a punishment wrapped in mercy. Scarfo never forgot it. For 20 years, Bruno's rule was steady. He met with Carlo Gambino in New York, kept peace with the other families, and turned Philadelphia into one of the most stable mafia territories in America. But stability breeds resentment. His reluctance to share profits and his quiet contempt for violence made him look weak to men who only understood power one way. On the night of March 21st, 1980, Angelo Bruno sat in the front seat of his car outside his home at 10th and Snyder Avenue. He was 69 years old, wearing a dark suit, waiting for his driver, John Stanfer, to finish a conversation. A shotgun blast tore through the silence and struck Bruno in the back of the head. He died instantly. Stanfer survived, dazed and bleeding beside him. The man who ordered the hit was Antonio Caponigro. Bruno's own consigliere, the family counselor, and supposedly his most trusted ally. Caponegro believed he could take over the family with the commission's blessing. He was wrong. Weeks later, his naked, beaten body was found stuffed in a car trunk in the Bronx. The message was unmistakable. Bruno's murder had not been sanctioned. The commission had turned its wrath on the man who broke its code. Within months, others connected to the plot were tortured and killed. Philadelphia's fragile peace was gone. The docile Don's death opened a door that would never close again. Over the next 4 years, more than 20 men would die in a brutal war for control, including Bruno's successor, Philip "Chicken Man" Testa, blown apart by a nail bomb, and Testa's own son, Salvatore, gunned down by former allies. The quiet order that Bruno built with patience and diplomacy was replaced by chaos and blood, the age of Scarfo, the violent heir he once tried to bury in the sand of Atlantic City. Angelo Bruno had ruled for 2 decades without a single shot fired at his command. In the end, one bullet ended him, and with it, the last era of restraint in the Philadelphia mob. The night he died, his neighbors came out to watch the police lights flicker across Snyder Avenue. The city had lost a man it barely knew, a businessman to some, a boss to others, and to the underworld, a reminder that even peace in the mafia comes at a price. It started in Castellammare del Golfo, a hill town on the Sicilian coast where family, feuds, and silence were a way of life. Joseph Carlo Bonanno was born there on January 18, 1905. His father, Salvatore, worked the clan's interests. His uncles, Giuseppe and Stefano, were mafia men. Their closest ally was Stefano Magaddino, head of a powerful Castellammare clan, and Joseph's kin by blood. The Bonannos fought with the Buccellatos. Men died. Vows hardened. When Joseph was 3, the family sailed for America. Williamsburg, Brooklyn. 10 years of city streets and cold water flats, then a return to Sicily. Salvatore died in 1915. By 1921, Magaddino fled to Buffalo to beat a murder case. The old ties stretched across the ocean and never broke. In 1924, the 20-year-old Bonanno slipped back into the United States. He stowed away on a Cuban fishing boat bound for Tampa with Peter Magaddino. Picked up by immigration in Jacksonville, bailed out for $1,000 through family connections, he came to New York and went to work. A bakery here, acting classes near Union Square, and then bootlegging with Gaspar di Gregorio and Giovanni Romano. A still blue. Romano died. Salvatore Maranzano, the Sicilian professor boss, noticed the steady young man and took him in. The city went to war in 1930. The Castellammarese War, Maranzano and his Sicilians on one side, Joe Masseria and the Brooklyn Old Guard on the other. A third force grew in the shadows, the Young Turks led by Charles "Lucky" Luciano, men who wanted modern rackets and American rules. Luciano cut a secret bargain. Masseria would die, Luciano would inherit. On April 15, 1931, Masseria fell. Maranzano declared himself capo di tutti capi, boss of bosses. Luciano decided one dictator was enough. On September 10, 1931, gunmen posing as taxmen murdered Maranzano in his Park Avenue office. In the aftermath, at 26, Joseph Bonanno took command of the bulk of Maranzano's family. He called himself the Father. Luciano dismantled the old throne and formed the commission. 5 New York families, seats at a national table, disputes settled by votes instead of vendettas. Bonanno claimed later he chose peace over another war with Luciano. Maybe. Either way, he lived and he ruled. That same year, 1931, Bonanno married Fay Labruzzo. 3 children followed: Salvatore, Bill, Catherine, and Joseph Jr. He bought property in Hempstead and Middletown. When Bill developed a dangerous ear infection, his parents sent him west to the dry air of Tucson. Soon, Joseph maintained a home there too. He became a U.S. citizen in 1945, picked up a $450 wage law fine that same year, and kept building. The Bonanno Reach looked legitimate on paper. Coat factories, laundries, cheese suppliers through Lino Saputo in the 1960s and 70s. funeral homes, and a trucking company. The Brooklyn funeral parlor drew rumors, double-decker coffins to hide more than grief. The book remained closed. He traveled too. Palermo, October 1957, the Grand Hotel Ede Palma meeting. And the next month, Appalachian, New York. Vito Genovese convened the bosses. State police swarmed the Hilltop estate. Some said Bonanno skipped it. An official report had him fleeing on foot. Either way, dozens were fined and sentenced, then won their appeals. Bonanno suffered a heart attack and avoided testifying. By 1963, the docile Don, he was not. Bonanno and Joseph Magliocco planned to kill Carlo Gambino, Tommy Lucchese, Stefano Magaddino, and Frank De Simone to seize the commission and crown themselves. Magliocco passed the contract to his hitman, Joseph Colombo. Colombo flipped, warned the targets, and the plot blew apart. The commission summoned the conspirators. Bonanno slipped north to Montreal. Magliocco, sick and shaken, confessed. They spared his life, retired him, fined him $50,000. As a reward for loyalty, Colombo got a family of his own. In October 1964, Bonanno returned to Manhattan. On the eve of a grand jury appearance, he vanished outside a Park Avenue building after dinner with his lawyers. Rumors pointed to Magaddino's men. FBI tapes later caught bosses surprised by the disappearance and Bonanno soldiers cursing the father who left them exposed. The streets filled the vacuum with bullets. The Banana War began. During Bonanno's absence, Gaspar Di Gregorio claimed the family with the commission's blessing, exploiting anger over Bill Bonanno's influence. Brooklyn split into Di Gregorio loyalists and Bonanno loyalists, and the shooting started. January 28, 1966, Di Gregorio proposed a peace talk. Bill agreed. As Bill's men approached a Troutman Street house, gunmen opened up. Miraculously, no one was hit. 4 months later, May 17, 1966, Joseph Bonanno reappeared at Foley Square, older and thinner, but still a boss in name and posture. By 1968, Di Gregorio took machine gun fire and a heart attack. The commission lost patience and shifted support to Paul Shaka. That same year, after a heart attack of his own, Bonanno chose survival. He retired as boss and left New York. Bill resigned as consigliere. Father and son moved west. The Banana War ended not with a treaty, but with a departure. Arizona became his stage. Tucson, Catalina Vista. He kept close to family and watched as the next generation drew heat. In Northern California, Bill and Joe Jr. mixed with a car dealer named Lou Peters. Peters flipped for the FBI and helped indict Joseph. September 1980, a jury in San Jose convicted Bonanno of conspiracy to obstruct justice in a money laundering probe. On January 12, 1981, he received 5 years and a $10,000 fine. Illness later softened the time. He did 8 months in 1983 for obstruction. Then in 1985, 14 months for contempt after refusing to testify in a racketeering case. Springfield Medical Transfer. Released November 1st, 1986. He stepped into the light too. In 1971, Gay Talisa's honor. Thy father put the family on America's nightstands and enraged Joseph. By the late 70s, his anger cooled. He wanted his say. In 1983, he published A Man of Honor. He argued omerta was bigger than silence. He hadn't informed, he said he had interpreted. Editor Michael Corder called him a rare don who quoted Thucydides and Machiavelli to his men. That same year, Joseph and Bill sat with Mike Wallace on 60 Minutes, a boss and his son selling a legacy with straight faces and soft voices. He outlived nearly all of them. Carlo Gambino, Tommy Lucchese, Joe Colombo, even his rival Magaddino. He watched the commission fade under indictments, watched the streets trade silk hats for handcuffs. Joseph Charles Bonanno died in Tucson on May 11, 2002 at 97. Heart failure. He is entombed at Holy Hope Cemetery. For half a century, his signature was the same: patience, family, and a mind that preferred order to spectacle, until the day it didn't. He built an American empire out of Sicilian rules, survived 2 wars by choosing when not to fight, and wrote his own epitaph before anyone else could. The father left Brooklyn long ago, but the city he helped shape, the families, the codes, the commission he once tried to conquer still carries his shadow in its history and its cautionary tales. It started in Milwaukee, a city of breweries, factory smoke, and hard-working immigrants from the old country. Among them were the Balistrieris, Sicilians who brought with them the same sense of loyalty and silence that had shaped their homeland. Frank Peter Balistrieri was born there on May the 27th, 1918. He grew up in a world where respect mattered more than law, and where family could mean something larger, darker, and more powerful than blood. By the late 1950s, Frank had already proven himself as a man with ambition and nerve. He married Antonina Aliotto, the daughter of John Aliotto, boss of Milwaukee's Cosa Nostra family. That marriage sealed his place in the organization. When Aliotto retired in 1961, his son-in-law stepped into the top seat. Frank Balistrieri became boss, the undisputed head of the Milwaukee mob. The men called him Frankie Bal, a sharp dresser, educated, controlled, but quick to anger when disrespected. According to FBI files, his first years as boss were marked by a dangerous feud with Chicago's Tony Accardo. The story went that Balistrieri had a man killed, a nightclub owner named Izzy Pogrob, without clearing it with Accardo first. That was a serious mistake in the mafia world where even murder required permission. Despite the tension, the two sides made peace. By 1963, Balistrieri was running gambling and bookmaking across Wisconsin, and even parts of northern Illinois, territory he secured with Chicago's reluctant blessing. He was more businessman than brute. He promoted boxing matches, owned restaurants, bars, and strip clubs, and quietly controlled jukeboxes and vending machines throughout the city. But his real money and his real power came from Las Vegas. In their early 1970s, the Midwest mob family saw opportunity in the desert. Through loans from the Teamsters Pension Fund, casinos like the Stardust and the Fremont became front doors to the outfit's backroom economy. Balistrieri was at the center of it. He helped broker the deal that gave Kansas City boss Nick Chavella and Chicago's Joseph Ayupa their stake in the skim, the illegal siphoning of cash before it ever reached casino ledgers. The man fronting the operation was businessman Alan Glick, who ran the Argent Corporation. The man managing the casino floors was Frank Lefty Rosenthal, a Chicago associate whose success was built on manipulation and mob protection. Balistrieri didn't trust him. He thought Rosenthal was cutting him out, and that suspicion would later turn deadly. By the late 1970s, Balistrieri was under constant FBI pressure. The Bureau had labeled him Milwaukee's crime leader, and even sent an undercover agent, Joseph Pistone, better known as Donnie Brasco, to help set up a sting operation targeting his vending businesses. Then, in 1978, a car bomb killed August Palmisano, a gambler and suspected informant. The whispers said Balistrieri ordered the hit. The feds could never prove it. The same year, tensions boiled over with Kansas City's Chavella over how much each side should take from the Las Vegas skim. The dispute went to arbitration overseen by Chicago. Ayupa ruled that the outfit would take a 25% cut off the top. Balistrieri accepted the decision publicly. Privately, he blamed Rosenthal. In 1982, Rosenthal climbed into his Cadillac in Las Vegas. Seconds later, the car exploded. He survived barely. Investigators linked the bombing to Milwaukee, though no one was charged. That same year, federal agents came crashing through Balistrieri's front door with a sledgehammer. Wiretaps and raids had built a case against him for illegal gambling and tax evasion. In October 1983, he was convicted. The following spring, another conviction followed: extortion of a vending company. His two sons, both lawyers, were also caught in the case. They went to prison, lost their licenses, and never practiced again. Balistrieri was sentenced to 13 years behind bars and fined $30,000. Then came the big one. In 1985, he was tried again, this time in Kansas City, as part of the federal case against the Las Vegas skim. The evidence traced millions in stolen profits from the Stardust and Fremont casinos back to the Midwest crime families, On New Year's Day, 1986, Balistrieri pleaded guilty to racketeering and conspiracy. Another 10 years, another fine. The sentences ran together. He would spend most of the 1980s in federal custody, the once powerful godfather of Milwaukee, reduced to an aging inmate with a heart condition and a fading empire. On November 5th, 1991, he was released early for medical reasons. He went home to Milwaukee, quiet and sick. In December 1992, he was hospitalized for colon surgery. He never recovered. Frank Peter Balistrieri died on February 7th, 1993, at the age of 74. For more than 30 years, he had ruled a city that didn't like to admit it had a mob. He ran it with a businessman's precision and a gangster's temper, keeping the peace through fear and money until the walls finally closed in. In the end, Balistrieri's legacy was written not in blood, but in balance sheets. The casino skims, the vending rackets, the quiet arrangements between Milwaukee and Chicago that kept the Midwest underworld humming. He called it business. The FBI called it organized crime. Either way, Frank Balistrieri made sure both words meant the same thing. He started out as a kid selling newspapers on the streets of Boyle Heights, a scrawny Jewish boy from a Ukrainian immigrant family shouting headlines for a nickel a copy. That kid would grow up to run Los Angeles. His name was Maya Harris Cohen, but the city knew him as Mickey. He was born in New York City in 1913, the son of Jewish immigrants from Kiev. His father died when he was young, and his mother took the family west looking for a fresh start. They landed in East LA, where Boyle Heights was tough but full of opportunity if you were willing to take it. By 8 years old, Mickey was working the street corners, a newsboy with more hustle than sense. He got sent to reform school by 12, shoplifting, petty theft, a kid with too much energy and no brakes. When he got out, he found boxing. At 15, he left Los Angeles for Cleveland, calling himself Irish Mickey Cohen. The name helped sell tickets in a sport built on blood and ethnicity. He wasn't great, but he was fearless. Between 1930 and 1933, he fought 21 times. Won some, lost more. Knocked out cold by Tommy Paul, a future world champion. By the time he hung up the gloves, Mickey had learned two things: how to take a punch and how to sell a story. The fight game introduced him to gamblers, hustlers, and mob men. Lou Rothkopf in Cleveland, Tommy Diaguardi and Oni Madden in New York. He started running errands, fixing games, and moving between cities as muscle for hire. When Prohibition was in full swing, Cohen made his way to Chicago, working as an enforcer for the outfit. He crossed paths with Al Capone, took orders from Jake Guzik, and played cards with killers. After a card game turned bloody, Cohen did a short stint behind bars, his first real taste of prison. When he got out, he went back to what he knew: gambling, rackets, and survival. By the mid-1930s, he was working again for Rothkopf, who had ties to Meyer Lansky and Benjamin Bugsy Siegel. Cleveland was quiet, Los Angeles wasn't. So Lansky sent him west. In 1939, Mickey Cohen came back to Los Angeles, not as a newsboy this time, but as Bugsy Siegel's right hand. Siegel was building an empire on the West Coast, gambling, racing wires, the beginnings of what would become Las Vegas. Mickey ran the sports book, collected debts, and made sure the money kept moving. When Siegel opened the Flamingo Hotel in 1946, Cohen helped build the operation that connected Hollywood, Vegas, and the mob. But when Siegel was assassinated in 1947, shot through the window of his Beverly Hills home, everything changed. Some say Mickey went berserk when he heard the news. Stormed into the Roosevelt Hotel, 2.45s in hand, shouting for the killers to face him. No one did. From that night on, he swore he'd never take orders again. He built his own crew, gamblers, gunmen, bodyguards, and took control of the Los Angeles rackets. He ran the Sunset Strip like it was his personal casino. Hollywood stars came to his clubs, politicians came for his money. The press couldn't get enough of him. He was loud, stylish, and dangerous, a gangster with celebrity swagger. But power in Los Angeles came with a price. Rival bosses like Jack Dragner saw him as a threat. Cops saw him as a symbol. His house in Brentwood was bombed more than once. He turned it into a fortress, searchlights on the roof, alarms on the doors, and a small armory hidden next to his tailor-made suits. He even hired Johnny Stompanato, Lana Turner's doomed lover, as a bodyguard. When Stompanato was stabbed to death by Turner's daughter in 1958, Cohen paid for the funeral himself. Through it all, he stayed in the headlines, part gangster, part celebrity, part American folktale. In 1950, the Kefauver Committee dragged Cohen into the spotlight during its hearings on organized crime. The Senate called him a menace. The public saw him as Hollywood's own outlaw. That same year, he went down for tax evasion and did 4 years. When he got out, he played it straight for a while, at least on paper. He opened flower shops, gas stations, clothing stores, even drove an ice cream truck. But behind the front, the rackets kept going. Cohen liked to reinvent himself. He met evangelist Billy Graham and told reporters he was high on the Christian way of life. When friends called him out for not changing, Mickey shrugged and said, "Why not a Christian gangster?" In 1961, the IRS caught up with him again, another tax conviction. This time they sent him to Alcatraz, the only man ever bailed out of that island prison, thanks to a bond signed by Supreme Court Chief Justice Earl Warren. But his luck ran out. Appeals failed and he was shipped to federal prison in Atlanta. There, an inmate tried to kill him with a lead pipe. Cohen survived, beaten and scarred but alive, too stubborn to die. He spent his later years speaking out against prison abuse, a strange turn for a man who'd spent most of his life breaking the law. When he got out in 1972, he'd been diagnosed with stomach cancer. The doctors misread it as an ulcer at first. By the time they caught it, it was too late. Mickey Cohen died on July 29, 1976, at the age of 62. He was buried at Hillside Memorial Park in Culver City among the city's Jewish elite, entertainers, businessmen, and fittingly, men who knew how to make their own luck. He'd come a long way from the kids selling papers on Soto and Brooklyn Street. From boxer to bodyguard, from enforcer to empire builder, Mickey Cohen lived the American dream the only way he knew how, by taking it. In the end, Los Angeles never forgot him, because for a while in that strange golden age between Hollywood and the underworld, Mickey Cohen was Los Angeles, fast-talking, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. It began in the working-class streets just outside Philadelphia, where Catholic families raised sons to be soldiers, and boys learned early that pain was something you swallowed. Frank Sheeran was one of them. Born in Camden, New Jersey in 1920 to an Irish-American family, he grew up poor, stubborn, and ready to fight for whatever came his way. By 1941, when the war broke out, Sheeran was a young man looking for direction. He enlisted in the army, and when Pearl Harbor was bombed, he was shipped overseas with the 45th Infantry Division, a unit that would see some of the bloodiest fighting of World War II. He fought in Sicily, across France, and to Germany. While most soldiers saw 100 days of combat, Sheeran saw 4 times that. 411 days of killing, surviving, and learning to turn off the part of himself that felt anything about it. Later, he'd admit to war crimes, executions, massacres, revenge killings. It was war that stripped him down to something cold and efficient. And when he came home, that version of Frank Sheeran didn't stay in Europe. He brought it back with him. After the war, Sheeran tried to build a normal life. He married, had children, and drove trucks to pay the bills. But violence followed him like a shadow. A beating here, a brawl there, small-time trouble that led to small-time connections. By the mid-1950s, Sheeran's name was on the radar of men like Russell Bufalino, the quiet, calculating boss of Pennsylvania's crime family. They met by chance, or maybe by fate, and Bufalino saw something useful in the tall Irish truck driver with the dead eyes of a combat veteran. He gave Sheeran small jobs, deliveries, collections, favors. The Irishman didn't talk much. He didn't complain, he got things done. That made him valuable. One job led to another, and soon Sheeran wasn't just driving trucks, he was driving mob bosses and taking care of their problems. In 1957, that path brought him to Jimmy Hoffa, the iron-willed head of the Teamsters Union. Hoffa was powerful, magnetic, and ruthless. He saw in Sheeran a kindred spirit, a man who could be trusted when things got dirty. They became friends, partners, almost family. Hoffa gave him his own Teamsters local in Delaware, a reward for loyalty and a way to tie him closer. In return, Sheeran handled the muscle work. He intimidated enemies, moved money, and when necessary, silenced people permanently. Under Hoffa, the line between labor and crime disappeared. The Teamsters Pension Fund became a bank for the mafia, financing casinos and rackets across the country. Hoffa needed muscle to protect it. Sheeran provided it. But nothing in the underworld lasts forever. In 1967, Hoffa went to prison for jury tampering and fraud. When he came out 5 years later, his world had changed. Frank Fitzsimmons, the man who replaced him, was playing ball with the mafia. Hoffa wanted his throne back, the bosses wanted him gone. Russell Bufalino, the man who had once introduced them, told Sheeran to stay quiet, to stay loyal to the family. Then, in the summer of 1975, the order came down. Hoffa had to go. Sheeran was the one they trusted to do it. He was Hoffa's friend, the only man Hoffa wouldn't see coming. According to Sheeran, on July 30th, 1975, he rode with Hoffa to a house in suburban Detroit, a meeting that was supposed to settle Hoffa's feud with the mafia. Inside, there was no negotiation. 2 bullets, back of the head, quick, clean, final. "I felt nothing," Sheeran would later say. For decades, Hoffa's disappearance was one of America's great mysteries. There were theories buried under Giant Stadium, burned in a car crusher, fed to pigs. But none of them came from someone who looked him in the eye. Then, years later, dying of cancer and confined to a nursing home, Frank Sheeran started talking. He spoke to his lawyer, Charles Brandt, over the course of 5 years. Those conversations became the book I Heard You Paint Houses, mob slang for contract killing. When Hoffa first met Sheeran, those were the words he used. "I heard you paint houses," Sheeran answered. "I also do my own plumbing." Paint was blood. Plumbing meant getting rid of the body. In the book, Sheeran confessed to killing Hoffa and more. He claimed 25 murders in total, including Crazy Joe Gallo, the Brooklyn mobster gunned down in Little Italy. He even hinted at helping move the rifles used in the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Whether all of it was true remains a matter of debate, but the tone, cold, flat, and unflinching, felt real enough. In 2019, Martin Scorsese turned that confession into The Irishman, a story not just about crime, but about time and the way loyalty, violence, and regret all age together. Robert De Niro played Sheeran, Al Pacino played Hoffa. The film showed what the book implied, that Frank Sheeran's life was built on friendship, obedience, and the slow erosion of a man's soul. Frank the Irishman. Sheeran died on December 14th, 2003 at 83 years old in a Pennsylvania nursing home. No charges were ever filed in Hoffa's disappearance. No body was ever found. What's left are his words, a confession from a man who spent his life serving power, then ended it trying to tell the truth. He'd once said that the war had taught him how to kill without feeling. By the time he died, it seemed the war had never really ended. It had just changed uniforms. If you enjoy our videos, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and share your thoughts about today's topic in the comments. It really helps the channel grow.